We approached the front of the synagogue and began firing at us.
Suspects talking about all these Jews need to die. We're still communicating with them.
Hate crimes are on the rise. Late last month, there were hate-filled crimes in multiple cities. I'm Tim Kremer, Executive Director of the New York State School Boards Association, and in this edition of Newsmakers, we will examine the issue of hate crimes with two experts in their field. Captain Carla DiRienzo oversees the New York State Police Bureau of Criminal Investigation, Hate Crimes Task Force, and Beth Martinez is the Education Director for the Albany office of the Anti-Defamation League. Welcome to both of you. So, Carla, I'd like to ask you first, what is a hate crime?
So a hate crime is a crime that is committed due to the person's race, religion, sexual orientation, national origin, age, gender, those type of things. And they're selected in whole or in part because of those things. And also vandalism we've seen a lot of that taking place lately in public places, private areas, due to a person's belonging to a certain category.
There are certain people who might be typically the victims of a hate crime. Who might those people be?
People who do fall into those categories, who have a certain religion that they practice, who belong, to a certain group, or who have, depending on what their sexual orientation is. We see a lot of that going on lately.
As the investigation's taking place, there's this link made to one of these categories you're referring to.
There's too many to list right now, but just for an example, such as harassment, assault, menacing, criminal mischief, manslaughter, murder, those type of crimes, if the prosecutor does deem that it does fall into the hate crime category, they are upgraded to a higher offense, and therefore they will receive more harsh, stricter penalties, prison time, fines if there's fines associated with it.
What do you think is going through a person's mind, Beth, when they enter into this world of committing a hate crime?
So like Carla described, hate crimes are because of a piece of a person's identity, whether it be their gender, race, religion, sexual orientation. It's a piece of someone's identity that another individual has a problem with. And we relate that back to bias. So everything goes back to someone's bias towards an individual. We all are born with bias. It's how we're raised, it's how we're developed in society. And when bias is left unchecked, when we don't have the education piece to help people become more respectful of one another, whether they agree with someone's race or religion or sexual orientation, then unfortunately it progresses to things like violence, discrimination, and unfortunately that's sort of how we get to this point of a hate crime.
When you explored hate crimes, do you think that these people who are committing them, do they have like an excuse? Do they say they're unfamiliar? Do they rationalize why they did this?
There's not a single profile that we can say that that person is going to commit a hate crime. What we've seen, they come from all walks of life, religion, different income backgrounds, different areas. We can't say any particular person would commit a hate crime. Based on what we have in our database and the cases we've investigated, all of our complaints they have a unique set of facts associated with those.
So this could be a person who is associated with a group.
Could be.
Or it could be
just
a lone wolf.
Correct. Could be a teenager who's trying to get peer acceptance or something. I mean, it could be, we really can't say one specific.
We are very concerned, obviously, working with the New York State School Board Association. We're very concerned about the impact these kind of crimes have on affecting children, students, and easily impressed by something like this and thinking this might be the cool way to get attention.
Correct.
And it's far from that.
All right. It is. It's scary and it's sad that we have to, expose these things are happening in our schools and other kids are exposed to it. We see a lot of it recently.
Any indication that it's more likely that the perpetrator is going to be a younger person or a male versus an older person or a female?
You know, like I said, in the arrests that we've made and over the last 3 years since we've been tracking this, there's no real set. I mean, it varies from case to case.
So this could happen anywhere, and it's going to be difficult for boards of education and the people who I represent to be completely aware of who might happen, because it could be anybody at any time.
It could be, and I think that's where you know, education and public awareness and those sort of things really help.
The thing we're most concerned with are education issues. And Beth, I understand the Anti-Defamation League is very much involved in educating young people, maybe not just young people, you have to tell me who your clientele is, regarding hate crimes and the danger and the damage associated with those.
Sure. So the Anti-Defamation League, we have a variety of education programs at our disposal. We believe in the power of education. So we have 27 regional offices across the country, and here in New York State, we have an office in Albany and an office in New York City. I deliver programs through our World of Difference Institute to educators, students, parents, administrators. We have anti-bias programs as well as bullying prevention programs to help sort of educate young people about being more respectful of one another, how to identify what bias is, how to confront it in their schools, how to be allies when they see a situation happening, and step up and not be a bystander. We know that bias and prejudice are learned behaviors, but we also know that they can be unlearned.
I hear a lot about implicit bias. Does that have anything to do with this conversation?
I think so. I mean, implicit bias is bias that people have that they may not even recognize they have within themselves. Maybe it's, you know, a person who is getting on an elevator and they see a particular other individual get on that makes them nervous and they clutch their purse as that person gets on the elevator. It's an ingrained thought in their mind of a bias towards maybe a male individual as a woman, that they're in danger or they could be in danger with a man getting on the elevator with them alone. So it's a bias that's sort of ingrained in your head that you don't necessarily think about every day, but is there because of how you were raised or a social consciousness that not everyone knows that they necessarily have.
Is there a connection between implicit bias and hate crimes, do you think?
I suppose there could be.
Okay.
If someone is raised and believes that a particular individual, because of their race or their religion, is wrong or is dangerous, and they are raised to believe that, and they continue to believe that and are never exposed to differences, then that may ultimately lead them to commit a crime towards those individuals. So I think that that could play a piece, absolutely.
So it's a continuum.
Absolutely, yes. We have a pyramid that ADL uses to talk about how when bias is left unchecked, it progresses up those levels.
Tell me about that pyramid.
Sure. So the pyramid, if you see here, we have just bias attitudes. And as we think about those being left unchecked, it progresses to acts of bias, to acts of discrimination, to bias-motivated violence, which would be a hate crime, and then ultimately the top level is genocide. So when we leave bias unchecked, whether it's implicit or explicit bias, it has that ability to progress and escalate up that pyramid.
And so it is something that there are connections made, and the point is, in order to prevent getting all the way to genocide, for God's sakes, we want to make sure that we try to inhibit that kind of behavior, and education is the best way to do that. Now, you say that you go around to different school districts?
Yes. Primarily, we work with school districts.
Okay.
That's our primary clientele. We do community of difference programs as well, and college campuses as well.
Okay.
In addition to our World of Difference Institute programs, we also have a positive school climate program called No Place for Hate. We've been doing that for several years. Up here in upstate New York, we've been doing it with schools since 2012. Downstate, we've been doing it a little bit longer. This year we have over 250 schools enrolled in our program, and basically we recognize them for doing work around confronting bias and bigotry in their school and creating positive school environments.
What grade levels are you reaching?
So that's K through 12.
Wow.
K through 12.
Okay, so
Yes.
and you're doing a lot of very young children then?
Yes, so I mean, primarily more of our training programs are focused on, say, grades 3 and up.
Okay.
But No Place for Hate definitely encompasses elementary schools as a whole. And we leave it up to schools to decide what different things they're doing, what programs will help fit that criteria of being a part of the program. So maybe they decide they're going to do They're bringing a speaker. They're going to do a book series and read books that focus on a particular topic to address with their students about bullying or about being respectful or about kindness, things that help sort of build positive school climate to be a part of the program.
Who would typically invite you to come to their school?
So I get contacted by administrators. Sometimes I'm contacted by teachers themselves who've heard about the program, school counselors. Sometimes it's a parent who's seen the program at a sister school and is interested in bringing it to their district. And sometimes it's superintendent. A lot of it in this area particularly is word of mouth. So I started in 2012 with 2 schools involved in No Place for Hate, and this year we have 78 schools, excuse me, in upstate New York that are now a part of the program.
Wow.
So we're really proud of the growth that we've made.
Right.
And we're seeing a lot more districts joining as whole districts, so that it's that universal message K-12, that they're all promoting their district as being a No Place for Hate district.
When we put this together, we saw there's an education aspect to it, but we're talking about hate crimes and the legal aspect to this. And Carla, you are involved with 2 units, as I understand it, a hate crimes unit and the state's hate crimes task force. Can you tell me what they do?
So the hate crimes unit is basically, we've trained approximately 80 state police investigators to also be bias crime investigators. So we put through a school last year about this time, and we trained 80 of our people and 40 of other agencies' people. So they are assigned in the troops to regular field assignments, and then when a hate crime is reported, the trooper will get all the pertinent information, and then they will reach out to the hate crimes investigator, and that investigator will then adopt that case. So they will take that case over, and they will also inform me of the particulars because I have the statewide perspective on all the hate crimes that occur. So they'll get all the information to me, and then I am a part of a hate crimes task force with the governor's office and also with DHR and other agencies as well. So we then have, weekly conference calls and different meetings. So we talk about the crimes that have occurred in the state and different updates that come in and different, if something different has happened or there was a case of particular interest to the governor's office, we would brief them up on that. So there's kind of 2 different parts to that. But also as part of the task force, DHR has a hotline, a text and also phone hotline where the public can call in that hotline, and then DHR will take the information and send it to me. And then I'll look at it and I will send it to the appropriate agency to be followed up for.
So I've called in the hotline, and I'm convinced I've been either victimized or I've witnessed a hate crime, but that's not an automatic. When it gets to you,
Right.
you have to do an investigation. You might find, maybe it wasn't a hate crime. Something else is going on here.
So I usually get emails from DHR in New York City, and they'll send it to me and I'll take a look at it. And if it's something that's definitely, like a crime has definitely not occurred, I'll refer it back to DHR because they get other calls on like housing discrimination and other type of.
Oh, not even a crime at all.
Not right, so something civil. So
Okay.
I'll refer that back to them, but 99% of them are or look like they're a crime. So,
Sure.
But so then I'll take all the information and I'll make sure it gets to the appropriate investigator, and they will conduct an investigation and start a case on it, and then I keep track of all that, and then I get weekly updates and just follow up with them and follow through until the case is closed, either by arrest or investigation.
You're coordinating investigations statewide,
Correct.
okay? Is there any pattern? Is there any place where hate crimes are more likely to occur?
It's really hard to say. It's kind of sporadic. There's no real, we've kind of looked to see if there's any trend or any particular place that it's more, occurring more than in others, but it's really not. It's kind of, it varies throughout the state.
Would it be inappropriate for me to say where there's a high level of diversity, more people who are different from one another, there's more likelihood that hate crime could occur? Or because if I'm in a very small, rural, homogeneous community, I don't know, but you brought up other things like age and religion, and I guess it could occur anywhere.
It really could. I mean, I would say obviously the more populated, like New York City, they're going to have more hate crimes because of, just the sheer population. There's more people, more crimes occur in New York City than they do in a small town.
ADL completes an audit every year on anti-Semitic incidents that happen, and we've seen a tremendous increase, the largest increase since we've been doing the study. And the shocking thing to me as an educator, a former teacher, was that we were seeing much more incidents of anti-Semitism happening in our schools. That was a big trend that happened this year that we saw as we track anti-Semitism. So that was something that we did notice, is that anti-Semitic incidents were on the rise within public schools and on college campuses.
There is such a polarization among people right now over political issues and a variety of things, where there's rhetoric coming out of Washington or other places that are leadership posts. There's negative social media that is out there all the time. There's negative conversations that are taking place on radio and television and such. To what extent does that kind of constant bombardment of those kinds of conversations, that kind of information, lead to some of the hate crimes that might be committed, Beth?
Sure. So I think when hateful rhetoric goes left unchecked in our public sector in any capacity, it gives those individuals that are doing that the green light to continue it further. So whether it's a social media platform such as Facebook or Gab or other platforms that are leaving it unchecked and not curbing the hateful speech online, or whether it's somebody in leadership who's refusing to address it or not confronting the issues that are happening, I think in any capacity, when it's left unchecked, it sort of gives those individuals more courage and more empowerment to continue that rhetoric.
Well, that's certainly what we've been worried about, that where there's not somebody who's the conscious of America, the conscious of New York, saying, hey, wait a minute, that's not the way we do things here. And we are worried that there are too many people who are sending a wrong message to our kids, that this kind of rhetoric, these kinds of social media posts, this kind of polarization and hatred, that's the way you roll. That's the way it works. That's what happens among adults. And we're certainly glad to know that the ADL is out there trying to stifle that kind of consideration. The suggestion was made that synagogues, other places of worship, should be developing high security plans and doing training for active shooters and such.
I mean, I definitely think they should have a plan in place. And if they do have a plan, they should make sure that it's updated, yearly.
Yep.
The only thing I can say is, like, if they have any questions on how to implement a plan, they could certainly reach out to us and we could point them in the right direction. I know the Division of Homeland Security does do active shooter drills, and they might be able to assist them.
Is there a organization or a unit that would come into a place of worship or a sort of a public building and walk through it and say, here's some vulnerabilities?
I'm sure there is. I know the state police, we assist the schools in that type of, with those sort of plans and safety plans and that sort of thing. I don't believe we do any private organizations, but I'm sure we could help them with finding somebody that would.
Yeah, I don't know where churches and house of worships fall in public, private, personally, but I know that schools have this security plans and active shooter drills and such are unfortunately commonplace. But now to be thinking that it's going to have to be done in churches and synagogues, it's
scary.
Yeah, I mean, I know from my personal knowledge, I work in a building with the Jewish Federation of Northeastern New York, and every fall the community liaison there has a security briefing with the FBI and with local synagogue officials and the local police, so that there's different briefings that they get in terms of, like, the FBI and the local police of what they can be doing to keep their institutions safe. So I do think the majority of institutions, specifically in this area, have already been thinking about and putting plans in place to make sure that their institutions are secure.
I guess I'd like to end on kind of a hopeful thinking. As you look to the future, Beth, you're out there meeting with these people, trying to teach kids about hate crimes and trying to be respectful of people, be accepting of other people's views and beliefs. Are you hopeful that this is going to take, that the next generation and generations beyond might actually get it, and the reduction of hate crimes is a possibility?
I am hopeful. I mean, going to schools, being a part of training programs that we do with students, you can't not be hopeful. We hope that by the education programs that we deliver with students, with the strategies and the tools that we're able to give them, that they will feel more confident to be allies and to step up and to interfere when they see hateful rhetoric and help build a more respectful and inclusive society.
And do you get good feedback from these kids?
We do. I mean, we hear really positive things when we go into the school system. Kids are really wanting to help create change in their schools, in their communities, and become more active and taking a more active role in helping to make that change happen.
We are hopeful that there's a brighter world ahead of us. So thank you both very much. Carla, Beth, thank you so much for being here. We really look forward to working further with you and learning more about the progress you're making in this important area. Thank you to Carla and Beth for insightful information on hate crimes. We have provided additional information on this topic on our Newsmaker YouTube page. Until our next edition of Newsmakers, have a good day.